Welcome to the You're Not Crazy podcast, hosted by Jessica Knight, a certified life coach who specializes in healing from narcissistic and emotional abuse. This podcast is intended to help you identify manipulative and abusive behavior, set boundaries with yourself and others, and heal the relationship with yourself so you can learn to love in a healthy way. You can connect with Jessica and find additional resources, content, and coaching at emotionalabusecoach.com.
Thank you for being here. Today I'm going to do something different, and I'm going to share a bonus episode that dives into one of the most painful and confusing experiences that I feel we face, and that's the trauma bond. It's the question that comes up over and over again. Why can't I leave? And even when I know it's toxic, why can't I begin to break away? In this episode, I break down a lot of various parts of trauma bonding, why it forms and how it keeps you hooked, and what it takes to begin breaking free. This is not just about abusive behavior. It's about what happens inside you when harm and hope are tangled so much together. This episode is actually part of the bonus series, which is within Unhooked. Unhooked is my new offering about the cycle of abuse, how to map out your specific cycle of abuse. And that process, that way of working with the cycle of abuse has been something that has always been super helpful for me to begin to see where I have power. But I think something that's core to that is the fact that we are trauma bonded, and that's how we're operating within it. And so this is a bonus episode that I offered on that series and felt like it needed to live here too. If you need more support, you can always reach out to me at emotionalabusecoach.com or at high-conflictdivorcecoaching.com. You can find me on Substack at Jessica Knight Coaching. If you just search Jessica Knight Coaching, all of these links are also in my show notes. I do one-on-one coaching and validation calls, which are just one-off offerings. And if you are interested in Unhooked, especially after listening to this episode, the link is below in the show notes, and it's on my website as well. This is a bonus episode about the trauma bond. And now I could do another 10 to 20 part series about trauma bonding, and I might in the future. But for now, I'm going to try and explain as much as I can in a Q&A episode with the most common questions that I get about trauma bonding. Most people ask, what is a trauma bond? A trauma bond is a psychological and physiological attachment to somebody who repeatedly harms you. It forms when abuse is interspersed with moments of affection, comfort, and reprieve. And so over time, your body and brain become trapped in this survival loop where the same person who creates the danger also becomes the perceived source of safety. This is not confusion. This is your nervous system feeling hijacked, which is why it feels like you're addicted. Trauma bonds develop through a cycle of abuse that conditions you to expect pain, fear the consequences, and chase reconciliation. Your brain becomes chemically addicted to the highs and the lows, and your body clings to the temporary relief because it's starving for peace. They don't form in a vacuum. They form in people with high empathy, people with past wounds, neglect, abandonment, betrayal. They form in people with a deep capacity for connection, and abusers exploit that a lot of the time. It is very hard to explain exactly what a trauma bond really is, but if you have felt it, you know that this is what you're experiencing. How do you know if you're trauma bonded? I'm going to list a few signs. You crave validation from someone who destroys you. You feel like it's your fault. You tell others the good parts while secretly falling apart. You feel physically sick at the thought of leaving them, like that if you can't, that it just won't happen. You're only okay when they are being nice. There are not signs of weakness. This is emotional abuse. And it is what it looks like when somebody distorts your reality and then convinces you it's your job to stay and fix it. A question I get asked a lot is, why can't I leave even though I know they're toxic? And it's because your brain was trained to associate pain with closeness. Abuse isn't just painful, it's confusing, it's disorienting, and then it rewards you. And over time, your nervous system starts relying on the cycle itself for regulation. Stress hormones spike during tension, dopamine floods in reconciliation. The chemical high becomes really addictive, and your brain starts chasing that relief. You're not staying because you want them in the way that they're behaving right now. You're staying because your body thinks you need them to stop the pain. You're not addicted to the abuser. You're addicted to the version of you that felt safe when they were being nice and calm and was that sliver of hope, that moment of relief. That version of yourself you want back, and that's what keeps you hooked. A lot of people ask me, is the trauma bond the same as love? And the answer is no. Love is consistent, safe, reciprocal. A trauma bond is unpredictable, unbalanced, built on fear. You don't feel secure. You feel obsessed, anxious. You feel responsible for their behavior. And like losing them would destroy you. You didn't stay because you loved them. You stayed because the cycle convinced you that they were also the cure to your pain. So many people say, why do I keep going back? And it's because that's how the cycle is designed. It's not a character flaw in you, it's the outcome of conditioning. And the abuser gives just enough hope, just enough softness to keep you chasing. And that flicker of kindness becomes the justification for staying. It's important for you to look at how patterned the cycle is, how predictable, how intentional. These are tools of control. You were never in charge of the cycle. You weren't failing at being in love. You were surviving manipulation. People say, can the trauma bond be broken? Yeah, it can. But it's not by waiting until you stop loving them. You don't need to wait for that clarity. You don't need to wait to be totally sure. You can leave confused. You can leave still in love. You can leave in whatever state, because the truth will catch up over time. Healing gives you that space that you need for clarity so you actually can think. And I'm going to share a few things that help when you are trying to break the trauma bond. You can name it, say it out loud. This is trauma bonded. I'm not in love. I am trauma bonded. Interrupt the pattern. Go no contact or low contact or limited contact or just less contact. Anchor your body. So, like, literally put your feet on the floor and feel your feet on the floor. I know that sounds silly. It's something I used to do all the time, where I would just remind myself that like my feet are actually on the ground. I would remind myself to take a bigger, deep breath. If I felt anxious, I'd go out and for a walk, even if it was just around the block. It helps because you're moving the energy within you. This one is the hardest one. It's stop trying to figure them out. You don't need to understand and dissect the abuse to name it, even though it can be helpful to understand the patterns and understand it's not you and understand narcissism. But you don't have to understand it to name it. No contact isn't pretty, but the abuser does tend to thrive on access. And so you can think of ways to starve that cycle. A lot of people ask me, does the abuser know what they're doing? And I think some do and some don't. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, because many abusers, especially those with NPD and antisocial traits, absolutely know how to instill fear, guilt, and shame. They know how to twist your words. They know how to weaponize silence and affection and attention. Others may not fully grasp the harm that they're causing, but that doesn't make it harmless. Ignorance does not make it less abusive. I used to write this down on my journal, like on the hardcover. You were harmed. End of story. I would write that over and over and over. when you leave, a lot of people feel worse. So that's another question here. Why do I feel worse after I leave? It's because you're in withdrawal. That panic and loneliness and grief, that's your body screaming for the chemical pattern that I mentioned earlier that it got so used to. You're not doing something wrong, you're detoxing, and that's a sign of healing, not failure. I want to talk briefly about the myth that I'm going to call it of mutual abuse. And this is one of the most damaging lies survivors internalize, is the idea that maybe I was abusive too. And now let's break this down. Reacting to abuse is not the same as causing it. Having trauma responses like yelling, crying, shutting down, fawning, begging someone to love you is not the same as abuse. It's survival. Abuse is about power and control. It's a pattern. Just because you raised your voice doesn't make it mutual. Just because you broke down doesn't make it mutual. Just because you lost yourself in the relationship doesn't make you the abuser. It makes you human. And when both people are reacting, it doesn't mean both are equally responsible. One person is creating chaos and the other is trying to survive it. If you are still inside of the trauma bond, still walking on eggshells, still hoping they'll change, this isn't an episode to shame yourself. You don't have to leave today. You don't have to be sure. You don't even have to be ready. You can just start whispering some of these truths to yourself and just really seeing where you are in the cycle. And missing them doesn't mean that you made a mistake. It means that you're wired for connection and that they use that against you. Trauma bonds feel like home because they mimic the chaos that your body got used to. And a lot of times we do mistake familiarity for safety. In my story, I was raised in pain and unpredictability and silence and fear. And I found myself drawn back to it. But that doesn't mean that you have to be in that in order to really feel stuck on a relationship that is hurting you. It doesn't mean you're broken. You are brave for being here and recognizing the pattern. And I think that healing feels really strange sometimes, but your nervous system is learning what's actually safe. You don't have to hate them. You don't have to erase the good memories. You just have to stop gaslighting yourself into believing the harm didn't happen. I hope that this was helpful. I know it is not a full explanation of the trauma bond, but I hope that it was helpful enough at this point to give you something to think about. If this episode is something you've lived through but couldn't name, I invite you to go deeper inside Unhooked, Mapping the Cycle of Abuse. This is a private podcast series where we break down each phase of the abuse cycle, explore trauma bond in depth, and help you reclaim your clarity, your nervous system, and your sense of self. You're not too sensitive. You're not imagining it. You're mapping the cycle. You can go to my website, emotionalabusecoach.com, and click on Unhooked, or use the link below.